Sometimes in the morning, when I'm standing at the sink with puffy eyes and a mind that still feels half asleep, I catch myself whispering a small sentence. It's okay, just try again today. Or when I'm searching for a jacket I tossed somewhere the night before, I mumble, probably on the chair. These moments happen quickly, almost like breathing. But every time they do, I feel like I've touched a part of myself I usually keep hidden from the world. And then there are the quiet nights when I'm sitting on the couch under a warm lamp, the apartment still except for the hum of the AC, when a soft voice slips out of me, saying things I never say to anyone else. Not because I'm strange, but because I've spent years learning how to comfort myself. Years of having to hold my own emotions together when no one asked how I was doing. Years of filling the silence with whatever strength I had left. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky discovered that children talk to themselves to guide their feelings and actions. As we grow up, society teaches us to hide that instinct, to be quiet, to be strong. But the mechanism doesn't disappear. It simply moves inward, becoming a private voice that once helped us survive and still does. So if you also whisper small sentences when you're tired, overwhelmed, or stitching yourself back together after a long day, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It means you learned how to take care of yourself in the moments no one else could. And maybe that voice, the one you barely notice, is still trying to heal the parts of you that haven't been touched gently in a long time. I talk to myself way more often than I realize. It happens in small, ordinary moments. When I'm digging through my bag, whispering, "Where is it?" Or when I'm exhausted and mumble, "It's okay, just keep going." These little phrases slip out without planning, but they reveal something important about how my mind tries to steady itself when life feels overwhelming. It's almost like my brain jumps in to help before I even ask for it. Psychologists say this is completely normal. Lev Vygotsky, a well-known researcher, noticed that kids talk to themselves constantly while learning. They say things like, "Move this, be careful, try again." It helps them solve problems and stay focused. As adults, we learn to hide this because we don't want to look strange in public. But the habit doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. It becomes quieter, subtler, and shows up in small moments when stress pushes our thoughts to the surface. For me, self-talk usually comes out strongest when I'm overwhelmed or uncertain. When everything feels tangled, that small voice brings order. One thing at a time, slow down. You've handled this before. Hearing my own voice literally helps me breathe again. It's simple, but sometimes simple is exactly what we need when our mind is jumping in 10 different directions. And honestly, many of us learnt this habit from experiences we never really talk about. Maybe we didn't grow up with people who asked, "How are you doing?" or "What do you need?" Maybe no one taught us how to process stress gently, so we figured it out alone. We learnt to calm ourselves down, to talk ourselves through problems, to become our own support system, not because we wanted to be so independent, but because at the time, there wasn't another option. Over the years, that little voice became our backup plan, our safety net, the thing we turned to when life felt too heavy to hold quietly. Sometimes self-talk isn't emotional at all, it's practical. Before leaving the house, I say, "Phone, keys, wallet." When I'm fixing something, I mutter, "Okay, let's sort this out." When I'm cooking, I remind myself, "Turn off the stove," or "Don't forget the timer." These tiny verbal nudges keep my thoughts organized. They pull my attention back from drifting. Saying things out loud makes them real, manageable, less chaotic. But not all self-talk is kind. Some days that voice becomes sharp. "Why did you do that? Seriously? Again? You always mess things up." And usually that harshness isn't coming from the person I am today. It's coming from old pressure, old stress, old expectations that stuck to me long before I realized it. It's like an outdated script that still plays in the background, even though my life has changed. So if you ever catch yourself talking out loud or whispering something under your breath, don't assume something's wrong with you. Don't feel embarrassed. Almost everyone does it, they just don't admit it. Self-talk is your brain trying to help you stay calm, stay focused, and stay grounded. And when you slowly start speaking to yourself in a softer, kinder way, the whole experience changes. That little voice becomes less of a critic and more of a quiet friend, one who reminds you that you've made it through every hard day so far, and you can make it through this one too. There are days when everything feels like it's happening all at once. Work, emotions, responsibilities, they all pile up until your head feels crowded. And in the middle of that mess, you catch yourself saying something simple like, "All right, slow down." It's a quiet moment, but somehow it pulls you back, almost like your mind is gently grabbing your sleeve saying, "Hey, don't rush, we'll figure this out." Talking to yourself is one of the fastest ways to ground your brain, even if it seems small. A study from the University of Wisconsin found that when people say a word out loud like keys when looking for their keys, they find the object faster than when they only think the word. It sounds funny, but your brain listens differently when the instruction comes from your own voice. It treats it like a real signal, not just another wandering thought in the background. This kind of self-talk also helps when anxiety starts building. Stress makes everything feel bigger than it actually is. A mistake feels like a disaster. A delay feels like failure. But hearing yourself say, "It's okay, we've handled worse," brings things back down to the right size. It's like turning down the emotional volume so your brain can breathe again. And the best part is, it doesn't require any poetic speeches or inspirational quotes. The simplest lines do the job. Slow down. You're fine. Just start. These small, practical sentences work because they fit real life. They don't pretend everything is perfect. They just help you get through the next few minutes without falling apart. Self-talk also helps untangle your thoughts. When everything stays in your head, it feels messy and overwhelming. But when you say it out loud, even in the quietest whisper, it becomes clearer. It's like dumping out a cluttered drawer. You finally see what's inside, and once you see the pieces, you know what to do with them. It also teaches you how to be kinder to yourself. A lot of us grew up in homes where mistakes were handled with frustration, not patience. So we learn to talk to ourselves the same way, harshly. When you start using a softer voice with yourself, it can feel strange at first, almost unfamiliar. But that's actually the first step toward healing. Treating yourself the way you wish someone had treated you back then. So if you talk to yourself to stay steady, don't feel weird about it. There's nothing strange about using your own voice to guide yourself through a hard moment. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of trying. And sometimes that small voice, the one you use when things feel heavy, is the strongest part of you, even if no one else hears it. Some nights you don't mean to talk out loud. You're just closing the fridge, folding laundry, or sitting in your car a little longer than usual, and then it slips out. A small sentence you didn't rehearse. "I can't keep doing this," or "Why is this so hard?" It happens so quietly that even you catch yourself off guard. But in that moment, it feels real in a way nothing else did all day. It feels like the only version of you that isn't pretending. What most people don't realize is that self-talk shows up the loudest when your emotions are exhausted. When you've spent the whole day holding things together, smiling, being fine, and carrying things no one else fully sees. Your mind waits until the world goes quiet. Then it finally lets something leak out. Not to embarrass you, not to make you look strange, but because it needs a place to release the pressure you've been hiding. Psychologists call this emotional spillover, the moment when suppressed feelings find their way out through small behaviors, like sighing, pacing, or talking to yourself. One study from the University of Toronto found that people under chronic stress are significantly more likely to engage in spontaneous self-talk because it helps the brain regulate tension and regain a sense of control. And honestly, that makes sense. When your heart feels heavy, your brain looks for the quickest way to steady itself. Sometimes the fastest path is your own voice. Maybe you've noticed this pattern in your own life. When something hurts, but you don't have the words for it, you talk to yourself in small fragments. It's fine. Just keep going. Why do I feel like this? These aren't just phrases. They're emotional checkpoints, little signals that something inside you needs attention. Because even if you don't talk to anyone else about it, your inner voice refuses to stay quiet forever. And here's the thing, talking to yourself doesn't mean you're weak. Usually it means the opposite. It means you've spent years learning how to carry things alone. It means you know how to calm yourself when no one else is available. It means you've become your own sounding board, your own comfort, your own counselor, because life didn't always give you one. That habit doesn't come from weakness, it comes from survival. But there's a cost. When you rely too much on that inner voice to hold your emotions, you stop letting anyone else in. You get so used to being the one who self-soothes that you forget what it feels like to be supported. You pretend you don't need help. You pretend you're okay. But then, late at night or early in the morning, the truth slips out of your mouth in a quiet whisper. Not because you're falling apart, but because a part of you wants to finally be heard. And here's the part most people overlook. Your self-talk isn't random. It's not just noise. It's not just habit. Sometimes it's your mind trying to warn you, or protect you, or show you something you've been avoiding for a long time. The real mystery is figuring out what it's trying to say, because in the next part, we'll dive into that deeper layer, the moments when your inner voice isn't just reacting to stress, but actually guiding you. And once you understand that, the way you listen to yourself will change completely. There are moments when your self-talk doesn't sound like worry or stress anymore. It feels more like a quiet warning, a soft pull in your chest, a sentence you whisper without thinking, like, "Don't get too close," or "Be careful with this." Even when nothing obvious is happening, most people brush these moments off. They think it's overthinking, they think it's fear. But for many of us, especially those who've lived through emotional hurt, this voice is your mind's first line of protection. It learnt to speak up long before you learnt how to explain why. Psychologists call this protective self-talk, and it often shows up in people who grew up having to figure things out alone. When you didn't always have someone guiding you, your brain took that job for itself. It watches for patterns. It remembers how things felt, not just how they looked. And the moment something feels familiar, even a little too familiar, your inner voice steps in. Not to scare you, but to keep you from walking back into a version of pain you already survived. There's science behind this too. Researchers at Stanford found that the brain stores emotional memories much faster than logical memories, meaning your body remembers danger before your mind can explain it. So when your inner voice suddenly says, "Something feels off," it's often reacting to tiny signals you're not consciously noticing, a tone, a distance, a pattern you've seen before. You think you're being dramatic, but your brain is actually doing pattern recognition based on your past. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes that protective voice can feel like doubt. You meet someone new and your mind whispers, "Don't trust too fast." You get a good opportunity and it says, "Don't mess this up." You start feeling happy and it quietly adds, "Careful, this never lasts." On the surface it sounds negative. It sounds discouraging. But if you look underneath, you'll see something softer. It's just trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. For people who've been hurt, abandoned, or ignored, the inner voice becomes something like a bodyguard. One that doesn't wear a uniform or carry authority, but speaks through quiet warnings. The problem is that it wasn't trained to tell the difference between real danger and old memories. So sometimes it protects you too much. It keeps you from opening up. It keeps you from trusting people who might actually be good for you. It keeps you from taking steps forward because all it knows is how to prevent more pain. And this is where healing comes in. Not by silencing the voice, but by learning to talk with it instead of fighting it. When it says, "Don't get close," you don't have to obey it blindly. You can pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this fear or is this memory? When it says, "You can't handle this," you can respond gently, "I'm not who I used to be." Over time, the voice softens. It becomes less of a warning siren and more of a guide one that reminds you to stay aware, but doesn't keep you from living. When you stop treating that protective voice like an enemy and start trying to understand it, something quietly shifts inside you. You begin noticing new tones in it, strength, clarity, sometimes even kindness. Your self-talk stops echoing fear and starts sounding a lot more like wisdom. So the real question becomes, how do you reach that stage? In the next part, we'll explore the moment when your inner voice doesn't just protect you, but begins to teach you who you're becoming. There comes a point, usually after years of talking to yourself in the quiet, years of carrying things you didn't know how to name, where something in your inner voice starts to shift. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's more like one day you realize the words you say to yourself don't hit as hard as they used to. They're not as sharp, not as frightened, not as panicked. It's a small change, but you feel it. The voice inside you isn't just reacting to life anymore. It's paying attention, it's learning, and in its own quiet way, it's starting to teach you. Healing doesn't start with big breakthroughs. It starts with tiny internal corrections. That moment when you're about to say, "I always mess everything up," and something softer interrupts. "Hold on, that's not true." Or when fear kicks in and your mind automatically whispers, "Be careful," but instead of freezing, you pause and ask yourself, is this fear or is this a memory? These small pauses are not accidents. They're the early signs that your inner voice is no longer just a protector, it's becoming a guide. Psychologists call this inner reparenting, the process of developing a healthier internal voice to replace the harsh one you inherited from stress, trauma, or childhood patterns. A study from Columbia University found that people who consciously speak to themselves with self-compassionate language show increased activity in the parts of the brain related to emotional regulation and decision-making. In simple terms, changing how you talk to yourself literally changes how your brain handles life. You're not imagining the shift, you're rewiring parts of you that were running on survival mode for far too long. And maybe this sounds familiar. There were times in your life when your inner voice only knew how to warn you, times when it yelled because no one else listened, times when it criticized you because that's the tone you grew up around. But now, slowly, it's learning a new job. Instead of saying, "Don't trust anyone," it says, "Choose carefully." Instead of, "You can't do this," it says, "Take it one step at a time." Instead of, "You're alone," it says, "You've survived every version of you so far. You're not failing, you're evolving." That shift is you growing. You may not feel it day by day, but your inner voice does. The beautiful part is that your inner voice doesn't have to be perfect to be helpful. Healing isn't about turning your mind into a motivational speaker. It's about building a relationship with yourself that feels safe. Some days the voice will still sound unsure. Some days it'll still carry old fears. That's okay. You're not trying to erase your past. You're teaching it how to stop controlling your present. And every time you choose kindness over criticism, curiosity over judgment, patience over panic, you're strengthening the part of you that wants to move forward. And here's something people rarely talk about. When your inner voice becomes healthier, your outside world starts to change too. You outgrow people who only understand the older, wounded version of you. You stop chasing things that drain you. You stop forcing yourself into situations just to prove something. You start choosing peace over drama, rest over guilt, truth over pretending. It's not that life magically gets easier, it's that you finally have an inner voice that supports you instead of fighting you. That's the real transformation. And maybe the most powerful part is this. Once your inner voice becomes your teacher, you start hearing things you never noticed before. Things like, you deserve better, this feeling will pass, you're not who you used to be, and the quietest, most important message of all, I'm here, I'm not leaving. When your inner voice reaches that stage, you stop surviving and start living. And in the next part, or maybe in the next chapter of your life, you'll realize something even deeper. Your self-talk wasn't just a habit, it was the path that brought you back to yourself. Sometimes the most important relationship you'll ever repair is the one you have with yourself. And if this video helped you understand your inner voice a little better, stay with me. There's so much more we can unpack together, gently, slowly, in a way that actually makes sense for real life. If you'd like to keep growing, healing, and learning with me, go ahead and subscribe. Your journey doesn't have to be loud, it just has to continue